Elon Musk sat calmly under the blinding studio lights, his face unreadable as the host leaned forward with a smirk. The audience held their breath, sensing the tension in the air. It wasn't the first time a high-profile guest had been put on the spot, but this was different. The host, a well-known critic of Musk's unfiltered takes and unconventional ideas, had been waiting for this moment, a chance to knock the billionaire off his pedestal, to expose him as nothing more than an overhyped tech bro with too much power and too little humility. And so, with cameras rolling and millions watching live, the host delivered the question, with razor-sharp precision. You think you're a genius, don't you? But let's be real. Without your money, without your privilege, would anyone even take you seriously? A hushed gasp rippled through the audience. Musk didn't react immediately. He just sat there, silent. The host's smirk widened. He thought he had him cornered. He thought this was checkmate. But Musk was just getting started. The silence stretched, thick with anticipation. The audience shifted in their seats, waiting, watching. The host, confident in his jab, was already gearing up for his next attack, ready to relish in the moment Musk fumbled. And then, finally, Musk chuckled. Not a nervous chuckle, not an embarrassed one, but the kind of laugh that sent a shiver down your spine. The kind of laugh that made you realize you were about to regret everything, because what happened next would be talked about for years. The host's smirk didn't fade. If anything, it grew. He had spent years mastering this craft, cutting down guests with sharp questions, pushing them into corners they couldn't escape from. This wasn't just about Elon Musk. This was about power, about control. The host had built his career on taking down people he deemed arrogant, privileged, or undeserving of their success. And Musk, with his billions, his Twitter controversies, and his defiance of traditional media narratives, was the perfect target. The audience, a mix of skeptics and fans, waited for the response. Some wanted to see Musk stumble, to watch him squirm under the pressure of being called out on national television. Others hoped he would fire back with the same blunt confidence that had made him a legend in the tech world. The host knew this dynamic well. It was why he had framed the question the way he did, not as a genuine inquiry, but as a trap. If Musk got defensive, he'd look weak. If he lashed out, he'd look unhinged. And if he dodged, the host could paint him as a coward who couldn't handle the heat. For years, the media had controlled narratives like this. They decided who got praised, who got cancelled, and who got taken down a peg. Musk, despite his success, had always been a thorn in their side. He didn't play by their rules. He didn't rely on them to shape his image. In fact, he openly mocked them, exposing their biases and calling out their tactics in front of millions. And that made him dangerous. The host wasn't just looking for a viral moment. He was looking for a reckoning. The public had seen Musk win too many times, whether it was launching rockets into space, challenging government regulations, or making electric cars mainstream. But today, here, in this studio, the host wanted to remind everyone that no matter how powerful Musk was, he could still be humbled. He could still be taken down, just like anyone else. And Musk knew it. He could see the game being played. He had faced these kinds of people before, the ones who didn't care about innovation or progress, only about control, the ones who thrived on outrage and controversy, who made a living off tearing others down. This wasn't about intelligence, about money, or even about privilege. It was about something deeper, something Musk understood better than most. The three need to silence those who refuse to fall in line, because Musk wasn't supposed to exist in their world. He wasn't supposed to challenge industries, defy norms, and succeed without their approval. He wasn't supposed to think for himself, speak for himself, or, worst of all, encourage others to do the same. The host, like so many before him, wanted to prove that no matter how high Musk climbed, he could still be pulled back down. But what the host didn't realize was that he had just made the biggest mistake of his career, because Musk wasn't trapped in this moment. The host was. The Moments stretched, thick with unspoken tension. The host leaned back slightly, confidence radiating from every fiber of his being. He had set the trap, and now all he had to do was watch Musk struggle in it. He was already envisioning the headlines. Elon Musk finally put in his place. Could practically hear the social media frenzy, see the clips circulating with captions mocking the billionaire's stunned silence. For a fraction of a second, Musk considered playing along, letting the moment pass, taking the easy way out, offering some rehearsed response, letting the media have their fun before moving on. He had dealt with worse before. He had been ridiculed, dismissed, called reckless, called dangerous. He had faced public scrutiny that would have broken most people. But this was different. This wasn't about business. This wasn't about money. This was about something bigger. A realization settled in his mind like a quiet storm. He wasn't just facing a talk show host with a grudge. He was facing an entire system that had been designed to humiliate, to control, to remind people that no matter how successful they were, they still had to bow to the so-called gatekeepers. And if he let this moment pass, if he let this man get away with it, he wouldn't just be losing a debate, he'd be reinforcing a lie. The lie that people like him didn't deserve to think for themselves. That they owed their success to the permission of others. That no matter how much they built, created or changed the world, there would always be someone standing above them, waiting to tear it all down. And that, Musk decided, was unacceptable. His eyes flickered across the stage, scanning the host, the cameras, the audience. They were waiting for him to fold, waiting for him to shrink under the weight of a question designed to belittle everything he had ever accomplished. And maybe, once upon a time, he would have. Maybe years ago, when he was just another engineer with a dream too big for most people to comprehend, he might have doubted himself. But not anymore. He had fought too hard, risked too much, and defied too many odds to let a smug journalist rewrite his story. He had built empires out of sheer will, turned impossible ideas into reality, and taken ridicule in stride every step of the way. This was just another battle, and he knew exactly how it was going to end. A slow smile pulled at the corners of his lips, not a nervous smile, not an angry one, but the kind of smile that sent a chill down your spine, the kind of smile that told everyone watching something had just shifted. The host saw it too, and for the first time that night, his confidence wavered. Musk leaned forward, his expression unreadable. But there was something in his eyes, something the host hadn't anticipated. It wasn't anger, it wasn't offense, it was amusement. And that alone sent a ripple of unease through the studio. The host had expected a reaction, defensiveness, frustration, maybe even an attempt at a clever deflection. But this was different. This was the look of a man who already knew he had won. The host hesitated, just for a second. It was subtle, but Musk caught it. The balance of power was shifting, and he was about to tip the scales completely. He finally spoke, his voice calm, measured, carrying none of the indignation the host had been hoping for. "You're right," he said, his lips curling into a slight smirk. "I probably wouldn't be taken seriously without my money." The host blinked, momentarily caught off guard. This wasn't how these things were supposed to go. Musk was supposed to be scrambling, stumbling over his words, trying to justify himself. Instead, he was agreeing. No, there had to be a catch. Musk let the pause hang in the air just long enough to make everyone lean in, waiting, wondering where this was going. "In fact," he continued, tilting his head slightly, "if I lost every dollar I have tomorrow, if all my companies vanished, if I was reduced to nothing, I guarantee you I'd be back in the same position within a decade." The host's smirk flickered. This wasn't how things worked. People weren't supposed to admit things like that so openly. They were supposed to be defensive, desperate, to prove they deserved their success. But Musk wasn't playing that game. He was playing something entirely different. Because the truth is, Musk went on, his voice steady, deliberate, it was never about the money. It was about the mindset, the vision, the ability to take risks when others hesitate. That's the part people don't understand. They see the billions and assume that's what made me successful. But the money didn't come first. The ideas did. The execution did. The willingness to fail over and over and over again until something worked. The host's jaw tightened, his confidence now noticeably shaken. The audience, once on the edge of their seats for a takedown, was now transfixed for a completely different reason. Musk leaned back slightly, giving the host a moment to process, before delivering the next blow. You see, people love this narrative, that success is just handed to certain people, that without some kind of magic privilege, they'd be nothing. Because if that were true, then they don't have to try. They don't have to take responsibility for where they are. It's easier to believe that the system is rigged than to accept that maybe, just maybe, the difference between failure and success is persistence. Silence. The audience was dead still. The host opened his mouth, but Musk wasn't done. And let's be honest, he continued, his eyes locking onto the host's now tense expression. If money and privilege were all that mattered, then why aren't you me? The words landed like a thunderclap. The host flinched. It was involuntary, but it was there. A second of raw, unfiltered exposure. The audience saw it. The cameras caught it. And in that moment, the reversal was complete. Because suddenly, it wasn't Musk who was on trial. It was the host. His entire premise, his entire attack, had just crumbled in real time. He had framed Musk as a man propped up by wealth, someone who didn't deserve his position. But Musk had flipped it effortlessly. He had turned the spotlight around, forcing the host and everyone watching to confront a much more uncomfortable question. If success was just about having money, then why wasn't the host sitting in Musk's chair? Why wasn't he the one revolutionizing industries, launching rockets, pushing the boundaries of innovation? If privilege alone dictated success, then what was his excuse? The host's face tightened, and for the first time, he had no response, no clever comeback, no snarky remark, because deep down, he knew the answer. And worse, so did everyone watching. The power had shifted entirely. Musk had been 3 steps ahead all along. The host sat frozen, the weight of Musk's words settling over him like a suffocating fog. The silence in the room was deafening. It wasn't the reaction he had expected. He had envisioned this moment as his victory, his headline-making triumph over one of the most powerful figures in the world. But now, he was the one under scrutiny. His entire premise unraveled in a matter of seconds. The audience shifted in their seats, no longer looking at Musk as the one on trial. Their eyes were on the host now, their expressions shifting from amusement to something closer to pity. He had built his reputation on exposing others, on making them squirm under the weight of his carefully crafted narratives. But this time, he wasn't the one controlling the story. This time, he had been outmatched. And the worst part? It wasn't through insults or anger or even personal attacks. Musk hadn't needed to humiliate him. He had simply exposed the truth. And the truth, as always, was far more powerful than any spectacle the host had tried to create. The clip went viral within minutes. It was shared, dissected, analyzed across every platform. People weren't just watching Musk's response. They were replaying it, breaking it down, quoting it. His words resonated far beyond that studio, striking a nerve in millions of people who had been told that success was only for the lucky, the privileged, the chosen few. Comment sections flooded with discussions about perseverance, mindset, and the myths of overnight success. Suddenly, the host wasn't the voice of reason. He was the example of everything wrong with modern discourse. He had walked into the interview believing he was the arbiter of truth, the man who would expose Musk for the fraud he had always assumed him to be. But instead, he had been exposed himself. Networks began to distance themselves, not because of outrage, but because he had lost credibility. Audiences saw through the act now. They weren't entertained by the smug superiority anymore. They weren't interested in watching people be torn down for the sake of a viral moment. They wanted something real, and Musk had given it to them. But Musk, he didn't gloat, he didn't celebrate. He simply moved on, as he always did. While the host scrambled to do damage control, Musk continued building, innovating, pushing forward, because he knew something his critics never understood. True success isn't about proving people wrong. It's about proving yourself right. And that, more than anything, was the justice. The host had spent his career trying to make people doubt themselves, trying to reduce their accomplishments to nothing more than circumstance. But in the end, all he had done was reveal his own limitations. While Musk continued shaping the future, the host was left behind, drowning in the very narrative he had tried to craft for someone else. The real lesson? You can't bring down someone who never needed your approval to rise in the first place.